Welcome to this explainer of Velo, the campaign. I am so incredibly excited to take you on this deep dive today. This isn't just your standard high school marketing simulation. It's a tool that transforms a traditional classroom into a literal, high-stakes media war room. If you're looking to teach the nuts and bolts of marketing mechanics while genuinely building up your students' critical thinking skills, well, you are in the right place, because this is an absolute game changer.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the very first question that probably pops into your head is, will this be hard to run? Do I need to be some seasoned ad executive to pull this off? The short answer? No, absolutely not. You don't need a drop of prior marketing expertise, and you definitely don't need to memorize some massive list of cognitive biases. The whole simulation is specifically built to carry itself. Your main job? You're just facilitating the experience, not standing up there lecturing.
So here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to cover everything from the basic mechanics to the underlying math and grading. We'll start with Welcome to the Campaign, then look at reasoning over revenue, walk through the 13-day journey, explore why boring choice wins, and finally wrap up with assessment and the defense.
All right, Section 1, Welcome to the Campaign, where your students step into the shoes of solo media directors.
$750,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the massive launch budget your students are suddenly in charge of managing. They've got to figure out how to strategically allocate this giant war chest across 6 different marketing channels over 12 distinct decision days. Talk about jumping right into the deep end. It immediately raises the stakes and, trust me, it grabs their full attention right from the jump.
And the structure here is practically relentless. We're talking 13 class periods, 12 decision days, and 1 final defense. Day by day, your students are making actual media calls based on incoming data. And what's wild is they will genuinely feel the psychological pull of marketing patterns playing out in their own brains in real time, long before they ever have to stand up and defend those choices out loud.
Moving right along to Section 2, Reasoning over Revenue, where we get to see the patience framework in action.
And this brilliantly illustrates a massive shift in thinking. Traditional simulations usually just focus on maximizing fake money or memorizing trivia, but the patience framework totally flips the script. It shifts the focus entirely to building real capacities for uncertainty. In Velo, a student whose campaign actually earned less overall revenue, but who can defend their choices with airtight, specific evidence, will literally outscore a campaign that made top dollar but can't be explained. The workbook tracks the math, sure, but the student's journal? That is where the real reasoning lives.
Now, to pull that off, the simulation relies on this absolutely crucial rule called the Discovery First Protocol. Actually, scratch that. It's not just a rule. It is the single most important rule for teachers facilitating this. Here it is. You deliberately withhold all formal names of cognitive bias research until day 11. No saying things like sunk cost fallacy or parasocial interaction theory out loud. None of it. This forces the students to recognize, experience, and actually name these behavioral patterns in their own decisions first. It turns vocabulary from this dry, trivial memorization exercise into an incredibly powerful tool.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 13-day journey, mapping out the daily rhythm of the simulation.
So, how does a standard day actually operate? Well, every day follows a strict 4-step rhythm we call DIIE. That's Diagnosis, Intervention 1, Intervention 2, and Evaluation. This rhythm beautifully guides the provided say scripts for the teacher. And for the student? Their daily workflow is so brilliantly simple, yet really demanding. They read a short brief, make their allocation decision right there in their live dashboard workbook, and then, crucially, write a focused journal entry explaining their exact logic.
But here is where the real-world pressure kicks in. Students can't just hit a magical undo button when they have a bad day. Decisions are completely permanent, except during 3 strict reallocation windows, day 3, day 5, and day 8. Outside of those days, hands off the budget. And when they do get to those windows, there's a catch. They must move at least $25,000 and write out exactly why they are doing it. Because, let's face it, real media directors don't just get to erase a bad quarter, and neither do your students.
Let's move to and see how this builds across the whole experience. We kick things off with Day 0 orientation. By Day 3, we drop the first ethics seed, which gently pushes students to start thinking about the silent stakeholders behind all their data. Day 7 brings an informal peer critique. Then, boom, we hit the pivotal Day 11, the vocabulary reveal. That's where those cognitive biases they've been sweating over finally get their formal academic names. And the whole shebang culminates on day 12 with the graded oral defense.
Next up, Section 4, Why Boring Choice Wins. Let's look at the mathematical models under the hood. The simulation scoring engine is wonderfully counterintuitive. There are actually 3 primary defensible paths hard-coded into this thing: integrated attribution, ethical restraint, and growth first. And as you'd guess, the projected revenue for each varies wildly. But the critical takeaway here is that there's no single correct allocation. Instead, there are deliberate choices that require very different types of defenses. A student taking an ethical stance might leave some money on the table, while a highly balanced, integrated path just quietly compounds over time.
Now, what's really interesting about this early velocity data is that it reveals a fascinating little trap. Look, the growth-first path absolutely surges ahead early on, easily beating the others on day 2. But here is the secret mechanism encoded in the simulation. While that loud, aggressive growth-first strategy wins those isolated early days, it is actually the boring, highly cohesive, disciplined, integrated path that structurally out-earns everything else over the full 12-day portfolio. Early speed is not the whole season, folks.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Assessment and the Defense, or how exactly we grade the student's rationale. So out of the 140 total points available, the Daily Journal eats up a massive 80 points all by itself. The final reflection is 24 points, the peer critique is 20, and that final presentation is 16. Do you see what that does? It mathematically reinforces to the student that their daily reasoning and their ability to clearly explain their choices matters infinitely more than whatever their final revenue total says on the scoreboard.
So the crucial point is how this all wraps up in the dramatic climax of the Day 12 graded defense. First, the student opens a sealed prediction envelope they created way back on day 0. They stand up, deliver a strict 90-second thesis, and then, oh, this is where it gets really fun for you as the teacher, you select a highly specific counterargument from a provided bank to strategically expose that student's exact weakness. Like, imagine hitting a high-revenue growth-first defender with an ethical restraint counter about data privacy. They then have 120 seconds to respond using specific evidence from their journey. You are grading them on their composure under pressure, not whether they cave and flip their position just to please the teacher. It is just a remarkable, dynamic way to test true comprehension in real time, which naturally leads me to ask, are your students ready to defend their strategy? Because Velo isn't just about learning dry marketing terms. It's about building the resilience, the ethical awareness, and the deep reasoning capacities they are going to need out there in the real world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured look equips you to bring an incredibly engaging experience into your classroom. Keep explaining and keep learning.